the Trump administration on food health, reactions from the news media, and discussion on related topics. Transmitter 42. In this episode, Kimberley Huggins returns to discuss recent events in the world of food health. The current U.S. administration's choices for top health administration positions are beginning to have an effect, starting with the appointment of Robert Kennedy Jr., Jay Bhattacharya, and Marty Makary. We discuss some headlines from the news, highlight some industry reaction, and just chat about important food-related issues. Please welcome back Kimberley Huggins. Welcome back, Kimberley, to Transmitter 42. Today we're going to discuss what? Just bringing everyone up to date on the latest news and the latest advice that you can offer them for a healthy life.
I guess so. We kind of kicked it around and maybe play a little health hodgepodge. Who knows? We'll see what comes up.
So we're thrilled finally to see RFK has now been placed in the office of the Health and Human Services, right?
Confirmed, yes.
Barely confirmed. He's obviously ruffling feathers, Mr. Denier that they all claim him to be. But there's so much more than vaccines involved here. The food system is definitely on his target, and we can only hope that at least he brings a little bit of education to everyone who wants to do the best thing for their own bodies and their family.
I would just also add, I was really impressed with the confirmation hearings earlier last week with Jay Bhattacharya for NIH and Marty Makary for FDA, particularly FDA, because I think Dr. Makary is very interested in impacting the food supply for the better. I think he feels really that that's important. He also really feels compelled to, he's very against medicating children to the point that we have in our society right now. And I mean, I don't really have any numbers other than, you know, we all know the incidence of autism is crazy compared to when we were kids. I don't even know if that existed when we were kids, frankly. But let's just scale it back to when we were kids, nobody had a peanut allergy. Like that wasn't a thing. And now there are so many kids that have it or something, whatever. And I just think, you know, it's not always the food, but I think that's the first and the easiest thing to look to. And we have an epidemic in this country of just wanting to medicate first for everything. And just a little background about that. So in other countries, like say in France, if your child had an issue and you took them to the doctor, they would go through all of these things. They would test. The very first thing they would do would be, what are you eating? What are they eating? And they would try to go through all these things and rule them out. And then medication would be the absolute last resort, which I think that's how it should be. And the reason for that is all medications have side effects. I don't care. It could, aspirin, okay? It can be the most benign thing you could possibly think of, but it's going to have a side effect. And when you talk about a child having that's still growing and developing over time, just giving them medication willy-nilly isn't the smartest thing to do. So I'm encouraged that I'm encouraged that finally someone's actually going to be looking at it, and hopefully there'll be some changes.
I got to imagine that the lobbying interests will be hammering hard I guess, on the elected officials who would then put on pressure on the federal government's offices.
Well, we've already heard it. So, I mean, I don't know how tuned in you are wherever you live, but there's already been commercials on the radio here locally for advocating for why glyphosate is a fantastic product and why we all need it in our lives and how it saved lives and feeds the world and helps the soil and all these things, which is true. I mean, we can feed as many people as we do because of it, and it stops the depletion of the soil, which was a problem. Okay, but is anybody asking what it's doing to humans? Because they don't allow it in Europe. And we only started using it here in this country in the 90s. Now, that sounds like a long time ago, and I guess in the grand scheme of things it is. We've been using it for 40 years now, something like that.
30 or 40. I mean, when we were growing up, plowing was still the norm.
Right.
And now it is not the norm.
Right.
I'd really like to know what Europe does in their farming techniques if they don't have basically a weed killer to use instead of plowing. Don't know.
Well, the thing about it, though, is that's not just when it's used. See, they spray it on our food again after it's grown to dry it out and kill any bugs. So it's not just before the food is grown. It's after the food is grown. They use it as a desiccant. So the food is already there, whatever you're eating, like the soybeans, say, or the wheat. So it's getting treated. So it's not just the soil getting treated before the plant grows. It's getting treated again.
That is a step I wasn't aware of.
Right. So it's a problem.
I know when they spray our fields in the spring across the road here, I always make a point of not being around.
Yeah, same here. Those are the days the windows don't get opened.
Yeah.
But just for a little background, I mean, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not really into science like the Hubs is. But for what glyphosate does in a bug is it literally disintegrates its insides.
So it's a pesticide too?
Yeah. The soil thing, I think, just came about as a bonus, if you will. But anyway, back to the bugs. So my point is, okay, if you're consuming that, what do you think that's doing to your gut? Now, obviously, it's not enough to disintegrate your insides. But maybe if you have a gut problem like so many Americans do, maybe it is kind of, it's messing with your microbiome. And let's face it, there has to be something to, like, they don't allow it in Europe. And I will even say they don't have the same kind of wheat that we use over here. About 50 years ago, I'll say, we started, I mean, not everybody, but we started using an actual different kind of wheat than we had used before. It's a hybrid. It's made to be, yield more drought resistant, more all the things. But it has a protein in it that the human gut doesn't like. And I really do believe that's why people can go to Europe and eat all the bread and the pasta and don't have a problem. They don't feel sick. They don't feel... But then they come back here and they eat it.
And when Europeans visit us, we've heard reports of
sick.
the same issues.
So, but my whole point is, to zoom out on this a little bit, is the fact that there's a commercial on the radio when there hasn't been. But there's a commercial on the radio now of why glyphosate is so amazing. Tells me they're worried. Tells me they're concerned. And I do think it's interesting that the commercial never says anything. Well, that's not true. The commercial makes a point of saying, it's been approved time and again by the EPA and the FDA that glyphosate is safe for use. Okay, well...
So was Fin.
So are all kinds of things. I mean, we could do a whole episode about how the FDA is a, revolving door for Big Pharma. And anytime they want anything to get through, it's just pay up and you get the rubber stamp and you go on your merry way. So I know everybody would like to think that the FDA wouldn't let us use anything that would really harm us. That's just not true.
Misplaced faith of the American.
Right. And I mean, I'll admit that's sad. It's sad that these government agencies aren't working for us. But they're not. And I will even...
Us meaning individuals and their individual health.
Oh, I mean like the American people. Because if you look at the practices of what is going on in so many of these, in the health industry, in the food industry, and all this, we're just being treated as a crop. It's literally how much they can get out of you and how much they can use you to accomplish their ends. So, to bring that back around, I'm hoping with some different people in charge. And one of the things that needs to happen, this revolving door, I mean, there's a problem with people leaving the FDA or the CDC or the HHS and going and being on the Pfizer board or whatever board. I've just said Pfizer, but any pharmaceutical company. But then they're on there for a little, however long, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And then they leave there and they go back into HHS. Or they go back to the FDA or they go back to the... Okay, well, that should not be allowed. And I know Kennedy wants to stop that. We'll just see what happens.
Probably not enough time to prevent it. Because that's a years-long endeavor. It'll be longer than his term, most likely.
Right. So, but that's one of the reasons, though, to bring it back down. We can all hope that these changes are made, but if they're not, you have to have the knowledge, because then you have to look out for yourself, because nobody else is.
Speaking of crops, soybeans, of course, is an enormously popular one here.
Yeah.
With the classic rotation between corn and soybeans year after year, because they complement each other as far as crop rotation goes. You had mentioned previously, I believe, that soybeans, or at least some products from soybeans, have a very high amount of estrogen.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the one of the issues we have in our society right now. And I don't think people really understand how much the diets, the standard American diet that we have, is shaped and produced by the industries that we have here. Now, I would say at the most basic thing, they're just making economic decisions. But because soybeans are an easy crop to grow here and are a lucrative crop, apparently. I mean, I don't know anything about futures or how much they make off of it and everything. But the goal is to maximize. I mean, we have a soy lobby here and we have a corn lobby here. And they're all about maximizing profits, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. I'm not against people making money, it's the American way. But we have to think about, are any of those things that we're now letting people do. When I say that, I mean industries, marketing, there's a whole long list of that stuff. Is that helpful or hurtful to the American public? Because you can't just say anything's okay. I mean, like, if you were like if you were a for sure libertarian, most of those people believe nothing should be banned. You should be able to make whatever choice you want.
With information that is correct about it. I would think that would be a part of the agreement. Freedom to market, but you got to tell us what it is.
Okay, but then the next point would be, should you, and I actually got into a discussion with this about somebody online who thought that same thing. But should you really? Should you, even if you have the information, should you be allowed to market something that's poisonous? Now, people would say, well, we market alcohol, we market cigarettes, people are allowed to buy. That's true, but that's not food. Okay, everybody has to eat. Not everybody has to smoke. Not everybody has to drink. So, if everybody has to eat, the food system for your people you should want the best food system possible for your people. But that's not what we have going on. And back to soy. Soy is a crop that was originally animal feed. That's what it was for.
Early 20th century?
Right. And then when they used it for a while and they found out they could do all these things with it, they moved it into people food. Okay, well, that's not really good people food.
Let's not skip the industrial purpose of making airplane canopies as highlighted in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, where the guy's made his fortune. The fellow, one of the guys in the movie, was making airplane canopies out of soybeans.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's plastics, basically.
Right.
I have no idea how that worked, but that's interesting that you can use a crop that you can eat as well as to make it into an industrial product.
Well, to your point, and I will say this about soybean oil, okay, and just soy products in general, I'm not necessarily saying every single soy product out there is bad, although I wouldn't choose to eat it. But the amount that we're consuming now is the problem. It's in everything because it's a cheap filler. And it's in mayonnaise, and it's in formula, and it's in sauces, and just it's cook. You cook in it, and just all the things.
And baby formula.
Yeah, I said baby formula, but which is horrible. But what people don't understand, when you're getting that, you're getting, well, there's a lot of other things that I won't go into, but the biggest thing is you're getting estrogen when you take in soy because it's high in phytoestrogens, okay? And estrogen is needed in your body, but one of the problems we have in our society right now is people are getting too much estrogen. You can get it from lots of different things, but I truly think one of the reasons that the testosterone level of men is like 50% of what it was for the same age in the 70s. And it is really, it's not hyperbole to say it's a national security issue because people can't get pregnant. It's a problem. But we're like 1 tablespoon of soy, okay, has more estrogen in it than a birth control pill. So how many men out there want to think about you're taking birth control? That's what you're doing. You're getting the estrogen from your wife's birth control pill when you consume it.
I invite anyone to go to YouTube and basically look up anybody who is reviewing what kind of soy milk that they enjoy, and you tell me how manly they are. It's quite a shock. So,
well, and I would just say, if you feel like you want an alternate milk, there's better choices.
quickly, what's a couple of...
Coconut milk. Okay.
Coconut.
And then to just go back to something I was going to get to later, which I do think is interesting. In the early 1900s, I talked about how farmers were kind of like going through this time where it was an experiment of what they could feed their livestock, because they were feeding them different things to, they don't want anything to go to waste. If an animal will eat it rather than, that saves them. Okay. So they went through a little, and this is an example of how foods, why it's important to eat the right food, because you get a different results. So, and I don't know how this came about. I don't know where they got it from or whatever, but they were feeding their pigs coconut oil. Okay. Well, the pigs wouldn't get fat. They were lean, muscular, just, but they couldn't get them to get fat, which is what they needed, okay? Because the more they weigh, the more they get. But they put them on soy, and they got fat, okay? And you can Google it, and, there's literally a picture of a ham bone of a hog that was fed coconut oil and a hog that was fed soy. And there's way more fat and less muscle on the soy-fed hog than on the coconut oil-fed hog. Okay? So what do you think is happening to you? Now, obviously you're not a hog.
Most of us.
Okay. But there is kind of, they say the pig is like, when they do experiments or whatever, they do it on a pig because the response...
Somewhat similar, yeah.
The same way. So my point is, if the soy makes the pigs, the hogs, fat, what do you think it's doing to you when you eat it? And most people, I get it, most people are totally unaware of how much they're consuming. You just don't realize how much. Like when you eat out, everything, and this is kind of more broadly, not just soybean oil, but when you buy anything out, when you eat anything out, when you have any sauce, any bit of food, it has been cooked, prepared somehow, some way, whatever's been done to it, in seed oil. So, and this, this goes back to we've said before, try to make your food at home because at least you know what's in it. You have no clue when you're buying out. But the soy thing is an issue because of the high estrogen, and we're getting these, they're called xenoestrogens, from so many things. So it's a processed form that we eat, so it's a toxin. And
I mean, are they purposely making xenoestrogens, or is it a byproduct of their processes?
It's a byproduct. Like so many things are. I mean, so many things that we eat, they're not thinking about, like the article you said recently, like there's a lot of, I guess, doctors, nutritionists, researchers, whatever, that like if you just look at the oil, they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. But they're in their head, they're thinking of, okay, I took a soybean and crushed it, and the oil that came out of it, it's omega-6, and that's okay for humans. Because it is true, we do need omega-6, but it's the balance. Okay?
Between that and 3.
And most people aren't getting enough 3 because the biggest way to get 3 is in fish, and most people aren't eating that correctly. Okay.
Is there any meat on the hoof that can give you 3?
I mean, I think you get some, but it's not as much as if you consume fish. But they're not. But back to what I was saying about it's not just squeezing a soybean and getting the oil. That's not what happens. So when the oil, it's heated. They put hexane on it. It's deodorized and then when you heat it, it becomes rancid. So then it's oxidized. So that's what your body doesn't like, because to your body, that's fake. It doesn't.
All this because you can't consume the oil straight away because
Right.
it doesn't taste good.
Right. So but I mean, one of the reasons we have it is because it's a cheap alternative. I mean, we all know if you needed to cook something, you could go into the grocery store and you could get a big old bottle of Mazola corn oil or whatever cheaper than a thing of butter. But butter is better.
The original margarines occurred in the beginning of the 20th century, according to a book I read.
Yeah, those are junk too.
I wonder what oil did they use for that? Did they have soybeans back then? Soybean oil, I should say, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you look on those things now, I think I read a butter thing once, and it was like cottonseed oil, which you don't want that either. But anything that's like I grew up, my grandmother, bless her heart, she had the country crock in the refrigerator, or I can't believe it's not butter. Yeah, well, it's not, so don't eat it. It's not good for you.
If I remember right, that stuff is very easy to spread even when it's cold. So it's obviously been ginned up to be convenient.
Mm-hmm. But this all just goes back to, I mean, I'm a big believer in trying to eat as real food as you can. Eat real food. Eat unadulterated food. So, yes, if you want to get technical, butter is a processed food because somebody did something to it to turn it into butter. Okay?
Yeah, condensed it out of raw milk. So that's...
Right. But the fact is, it's still a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you look on the ingredients of country crock, or I can't believe it's not butter, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that isn't real food. And therefore your body doesn't recognize it. And so your body takes it as an invader. This is some foreign substance that we don't know what to do with. That's literally how your immune system reacts. And so when you're eating all this fake stuff, whether it's seed oil or chemicals, additives, all these things that are really doing a number on our kids, because 80% of what they're eating now isn't even real food. Then you wonder why your stomach is messed up. Why do you have Crohn's? Why do you have IBS? Why do you have a stomachache all the time? Why do you need a stomach acid blocker? Which, by the way, I just want to say, because there are millions of people in this country on stomach acid blocker, those drugs in Europe, by law, they are not allowed to have people on those drugs for longer than 2 weeks. And there are people in this country, I know them, who have been taking these medications for years.
Right?
Decade.
And what's the stated purpose of that for these people?
They say they have too much acid. So you have too much acid, you get heartburn, you feel it come up in your esophagus, whatever. And so they give you an acid blocker. But what they don't tell you, going back to all medications have side effects, this interferes with nutrient absorption in your stomach. Okay? So if you can't absorb the D you need, the B you need, the A you need, the K you need, the E you need, because those are the big ones. Mm-hmm. If you can't absorb those from your food, you're going to have a problem. And the real kicker is if you think you have too much stomach acid, it's really backwards. You don't have enough stomach acid, because if you are having acid, you feel like you have acid in your stomach, that means your stomach hasn't produced enough to close its little window, valve, whatever, at the top of your stomach. Your body's really sensitive, and it knows it's like level. And until it gets that level, it won't close. So then you get an acid comes up in your stomach. It's not that you have too much, it's that you don't have enough. And believe it or not, that usually comes back to a salt deficiency. And we all know how long they've been telling us we're eating too much salt. And really, for most people, it's the exact opposite. Boy, we just really went down the rabbit hole with that one.
Mm-hmm. Salt being sodium chloride, chlorine,
salt that your body
acid.
needs. Yeah.
That's the connection I can think of.
And this is to the other point about that. So your body is an electrical machine. Okay. So now, obviously, the nutrients that I just talked about, it definitely needs those. But if you don't have enough salt and you don't have enough magnesium and you don't have enough potassium, your body's not going to work. It's not going to function. You're going to have brain fog and you're going to have heart palpitations. And the biggest thing that makes people magnesium deficient is a high sugar diet, because your body has to use the magnesium to process all the sugar that your body has in it from a high sugar diet. So then you're magnesium deficient. So then you feel like crap because your body can't function because it doesn't have magnesium.
I wanted to talk about seed oils just a little bit more. How long have you known about seed oils? I mean, in your life, before you even knew they were bad?
Well, I mean, we grew up on corn oil. I mean, I remember my mom had Mazola. That was what we had in the house to cook with.
There's canola oil as well, which is...
That came probably when we were in high school, maybe. That's when I kind of remember it. And that's just another option. People bought into that because I can remember this sounds so crazy, but it's how they sold it. So if you look at the bottle of corn oil beside a bottle of canola oil, the canola oil looks much lighter.
Yeah.
And so
clearer,
there's like this, a psychological trick that you think, oh, it's lighter, so it must be better for me than the dark, dirty gold one.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder now, as we look at any of these things, is that gold color natural?
Probably not.
I do remember in the butter versus margarine discussion I referenced earlier, they did originally put out a margarine that was white, and it came with a packet of something yellow that you mix up with it.
Yeah, I remember something. I don't remember that in my house.
That was before our time, for sure.
But I think it's important to point out here, like, it was our grandparents that were trained on Crisco.
Yeah.
And my great grandmother used Crisco for everything. And this is the thing, because we were talking about this earlier. Once you go through one generation, the next generation has no concept of how to make biscuits without Crisco, because that's how Grandma did it. So that's just how you do it, right? Mm-hmm. But there was a time before Crisco, and people made biscuits. How'd they make them? They didn't use Crisco.
Animal lard.
Right. So my point is, it doesn't take very long and Americans have a short memory anyway on a lot of things. We were talking about this because of like the daylight savings time we just went on daylight savings time. So it's all over X right now. Should we, a lot of the senators are jockeying for permanent daylight saving sunshine or whatever bull there. I think it's ridiculous.
Let's twist nature by faking an hour. Because we humans are in charge of the universe. Did you know that?
But apparently they want us to go on daylight savings time and stay there, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking then there's just going to be daylight in the evening until 9 o'clock every day. But we should be looking at what's best for the circadian rhythm of humans, okay? And that's not being on daylight savings time. But the point I was making by bringing that up is apparently, and I didn't know this because I was like 6 at the time, so I don't remember it. But apparently in 1974, which sounds like forever ago now, we tried this when we were having the oil embargo and we were having to get gas on every,
even on days,
evens
that,
could go on this day and odds can go on. And I mean, I know that sounds crazy to people out there, but I actually do remember that. If your license plate had an even number, you could go on this day to get your gas. So you couldn't just go get it whenever you wanted. But they were doing all kinds of things. Like they wanted us to turn our thermostat down and just wear a sweater and all the whatever. But
Jimmy
apparently,
Carter. I remember that.
they floated, or no, we did it. We went to daylight savings time for a while because it was sold up. This is what we need to do to save oil.
This is in the wintertime when it wasn't on already?
I don't know the thinking behind it, but they did it, and it was apparently a disaster.
I'll have to look that one up.
And so they did it for a little while, and then they went back again. Now, people want to say, well, we need daylight savings for the farmers. The farmers don't give a flying flip. The cows get milked whether it's day or night or dark or light.
Right. They're on their own schedule,
Right.
which is tied to the universe via the solar time, which a big old orb in the sky is not going to listen to what we have to tell it.
So, but what I would say is it is important to you as a human, like Homo sapien species. The circadian rhythm is important to your body. So being divorced from the sun because we have lights now and we can stay up all night if we want to and do all the things, it means we can do it. It doesn't mean we should do it. And we need to gravitate to light in the morning and then, dark at whatever time that is, and then you go to bed shortly after that. Because we're not supposed to be staying up till 1 a.m. just because we have lights and can do it. That's really not healthy for us. And I mean, there's research out there that people who work night shift on a regular basis, they don't live as long.
When I've gone camping with Dylan and Logan, our sons, I've always kind of found it funny that when the sun goes down, we all get tired and go to bed.
Right.
It's just natural.
Right. So.
And then when the sun comes up at 5, because it's in the summertime, we get up.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So this is my political thing for the day. Just say no to Save Our Sunshine Act or whatever stupid thing they're calling it. I'm with
Save Our Science Act, please. Solar.
I'm with the stick with standard. That's the closest we can get to like the natural way it should be. I am for the not changing. I'm all for this going back and forth. I mean, Arizona doesn't do it, and they manage to survive. So the rest of us could be like that too. Because I hate daylight savings time. I feel like I'm hungover for a week. And I don't even have to go to work, so.
Back to oils just for a moment. Vegetable oils is what I remember hearing it called.
They like to say seed oil now because they think that sounds more natural.
So like the article we've been kind of referencing here, the very first thing out of the gate, until recently, most Americans have never heard the term, quote, seed oils, unquote, even though they've likely cooked with and consumed them for decades. Now, I would say you have to be pretty ignorant to not know that it's from some kind of grain or seed.
Well, I think they do have a point when they say, well, but this is the flaw in their argument. They want to say because people have been using it forever. Okay, so apparently, I mean, I'm 56, so I guess I'm old now. People have been using it for 50 years or however, So they're trying to say that because we've been using it forever, that it's okay.
It's long been staples in many home kitchens, they say here.
I mean, we used to have lead paint, too. Are we just going to... I don't really understand the point there. Just because we've been... I mean, people used to smoke. We were talking about this the other day. Everybody smoked. When we were younger, all our parents' generation, everybody smoked. I mean, you can go back and you can look at old magazine advertisements. There's literally... Dr. Smith chooses Camels for his after-dinner relaxation. Camels was a cigarette brand, if you didn't know that already. So, my point is, just because
Some of y'all probably don't know that.
No, just because we did it for however long, or it was acceptable in society for however long, doesn't mean it's still okay. It might mean that it is okay. That in itself is not a reason. Because we've been using it, that is not the reason that's okay.
Mm-hmm. What is the hateful eight? You ever heard that term?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's basically, there's eight oils. I don't know if I can remember them all. So it'll be soy, corn, canola. Do they count cottonseed? Rice bran. Sunflower is frequently sold as healthy. I wouldn't do that. Safflower, same thing. What's the last one? Did I say rice bran?
Yeah.
Cottonseed, maybe, was one of them.
Okay. I mean, obviously, it's a list of various ones that are easy to produce and sell.
Right. But what I would say about that, instead of thinking, like saying, I'll never remember all those 8, instead of trying to remember what you shouldn't eat, the biggest thing is cooking. So you want to think about, you don't want to cook with the liquid oil. If you're cooking, I would go with tallow. I would go with butter. I would go with ghee. I would go with lard. Good old bacon grease. You can't beat that. Makes your eggs taste really good in the morning.
Makes it easy to clean up, too. It's fabulous how it works. A little of that and some butter.
Olive oil, I would not recommend cooking with it because it doesn't have a high enough smoke point. Avocado oil, it has a good high smoke point, but the problem with avocado oil and olive oil in the marketplace is you're usually not getting 100% avocado oil or 100% olive oil.
The labeling in this country is what?
I'm sorry?
The labeling.
Oh, yeah, we don't, which is another thing we have to have change, is we have to have transparency in labeling, which we currently don't have. So right now you can call yourself avocado oil if you only have 40% of your oil in that bottle comes from an avocado. So the other 60% could be soybean oil, corn oil, whatever blend.
Is this same for olive as well?
Yes.
So you see, well, I mean, does extra virgin count for anything? Like the extra virgin bottle of olive oil?
I wouldn't.
You can't rely on that being.
You can't rely on anything. Now, I use, I have olive oil in the house, but I don't really use it. Just because there's not a lot of things I eat that I would use that for. If I were going to make like maybe a vinaigrette, but I literally try and get olive oil from Italy because they have different rules over there. Now, if you see olive oil that's like olive oil from California, Tunisia, Italy, okay, that's a blend. You're not getting olive oil. You're getting some whatever. But no, and then you have to keep up. I mean, like if you're like, I really like avocado oil and I really want to use it. Okay, well, you got to keep up with the research that every year tests all the different avocado oils out there to let you know which one is actually real avocado oil.
So there's a third-party independent just buying
Yes.
off the shelf and doing a testing.
I don't know the name of it, but I do know for the last couple years, if you're looking for a brand, Chosen avocado oil has passed the test. All the other ones didn't. Even the California oil, 100% from California. No, it failed. It's a blend. And see, this is the thing, going back to they should have to tell us that. And then we can decide if we want to buy it or not. But
right.
They're rigging
Give us choice.
They're rigging the game.
They don't want us to have choice.
Right. They're rigging the game.
Eat your pond weeds, Max. Remember that book? Eat your food, peasant.
Yeah. And
So-
I mean that all this goes into it all plays into there is a narrative being drilled down onto the public at large about a plant-based diet, which seed oils can conform to a plant-based diet. Okay. There's a reason they don't want us eating animal-based products. Okay. And it's before you say, well, they're trying to save the planet. That's a bunch of crap. Okay. Because that's just about money. We're old enough to remember in the 70s, it was the next ice age, and then it was the hole in the ozone layer, and then it was the acid rain, and then it was then it was the oceans are rising. I mean, every 10 years it's something. And the answer is always more money.
Yes.
But back to the I think in the particular article you were referencing about seed oils, is that all you have to do is look at the statistics. It's the same statistics that proves that meat does not, in fact, cause diabetes. Okay? Meat consumption, as well as butter consumption, but is lower than it has ever been. Animal-based protein. Lower than it's ever been. Okay? But yet, illness, okay, the graph correlates illness rising with these other things. Seed oil consumption would be one of them. Sugar consumption would be another one. High carbohydrate intake, high carbohydrate diet, that would be another one.
Yeah, I see the from 1960 till now, we'll just total red meat. It's basically per capita, I guess pounds or whatever. It was like 133 in 1960. It kind of peaked in the 80s. Actually, it kind of goes back and forth between beef and pork, and then ever since then, to 2025 forecast is 109. Not a lot less, but definitely less. It doesn't correlate with what they claim is eating more meat
Is making us
is
sick.
making us sick. We're getting sicker and we're eating less meat now.
Right. And so I would just kind of like reverse that to bring it back to seed oils. If, as the good doctor says, everyone knows seed oil is good for you. We've been using it for so long now, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. Then why is everybody sicker?
Right. All this data is available online. It's pretty easy to get at.
But there is a concerted effort and a concerted effort to get people to not eat animal-based food. Now, I know what I think about that, but I will just say that when the powers that be are hanging out in Davos, they're not eating peas and carrots. They're eating the finest Wagyu beef you could like $100 a pound stuff. Okay? They're not practicing what they preach, okay? They're not going without. They're not eating a plant-based diet. They're not sacrificing. They're not.
They've made it kind of clear that they treat themselves as an elite class that shouldn't follow the rules.
That's true. And
they're just trying to make sure that all of us work for them.
All you have to do is look at history. But I do think, and this is like getting off into a whole nother topic, but I think let's just say it, the globalists, the WEF crowd, whatever you want to call them, I think they don't care that they've showed their hand. I think they think they're at a point in history where they just don't need as many of us useless eaters anymore. And so they don't care. And I mean, all you have to do is look at, Americans are horrible about keeping up with world events. And part of that is by design. But you should look into how much farmland is being confiscated in places like the Netherlands. They're literally taking away people's food supply. Not just, they're taking away people's land and their ability to grow. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when less food is produced?
Famine.
Yeah, it's not pretty. But if you want to think about it, if you think cows are a problem on the planet, cows are like the planet. What a cow can do, he can take something that we don't eat and turn it into something we can eat, like the cow. Mm-hmm. It's literally how the planet functions.
One of the nature shows that I enjoy watching was basically referred to grazing animals on the in Africa. Mm-hmm. Basically, he said they're converting vegetation into protein.
Right. And
for the carnivores to eat.
Right. And so this is why it's another important thing for you to understand. Protein sources from plants are absolutely inferior to protein sources from animals. And the human species, I will say, is an omnivore. We can eat lots of different things. We evolved that way. If you believe in evolution, you look at the Paleolithic record. Okay. But the facts are, carbohydrates are not essential for humans. Now, we enjoy them. Our bodies can convert them to energy and use them and all the things. But they are not needed. Okay? Fats are. You hear about all the, this is another big lie about cholesterol, bad for you, and stop eating fat and eat low fat. That is like the worst information humanity's ever gotten. You have to have fat to function, or you're going to have dementia. It's straight up what's going to happen. And then protein. You have to have amino acids. You have to have protein, which is why so many vegans stop being vegan, because they feel awful eventually. Eventually, their body revolts and says, we can't do this anymore because you're not giving us what we need. So, and then back to what I was saying, plant protein, you can't eat enough peas to get the amount of protein that you need that you can get from a piece of steak or a piece of fish or a piece of pork even. And I would even say chicken. And chicken is not like my favorite. Like, I think it's like if I were choosing protein to eat, I wouldn't pick chicken at all. It's like my last choice. But it's definitely better than whatever pea protein you're trying to consume or whatever plant protein you're trying to consume.
You think industry is going to follow up with RFK's edicts? I mean, I see here that I guess the mere discussion of the seed oils has caused some food makers to strip it from their products. We'll see.
Well, I don't believe that's happening.
And then restaurants like, quote, the salad chain Sweet Green have removed them from their menus, which, okay, removed what from your menus, but I'm assuming some food makers see the writing on the wall, at least for the next 2 years, if not 4, and are just maneuvering appropriately.
Well, we'll see, because it's costly to make changes for anyone. I mean, I get that. And I would say, there have been a few restaurants out there who have announced, oh, we're going to all beef tallow. I think Steak and Shake was one of them who were like, oh, we're just using beef tallow. Okay, well, some people did some looking into that. And what they're doing is they're pre-frying their French fries in something else.
And then reheating them in tallow.
And then they're finishing them in tallow. Okay, well, that's cheating. That's not really what we want. Okay, so you have to, but this is why it's, and I don't think a lot of people, I mean, I've said before, I feel like this is our best chance to get anything changed, because we have people there who I do think have best interests at heart. And that's why I also feel like if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen. And people need to understand just how much money is involved, because people scream about how much money big oil uses to lobby Congress. 5 times what big oil uses is big pharma. I have no idea how much agriculture spends, but it's no small amount.
Bhattacharya has come a long way, hasn't he?
Yeah. Good for him. Sweetest form of revenge.
Any final thoughts? We have about 2 minutes left.
I just guess I want to reiterate, just eat real food. Think about it. The JERF diet. Just eat real food. If you have a metabolic condition, or you have diabetes, if you have all these things, I want you to know you can impact them dramatically through what you eat or what you don't eat. Don't feel like you don't have any control. Don't feel like, and I mean, question your doctor. Not everything your doctor is telling you is legit. He should have to back it up. And if he gets mad that you asked a question, that should tell you everything you need to know. He's supposed to be your partner and your advocate, not your boss. And not every doctor out there is bad, but, I've learned enough information. I can look at my blood work. I don't need to go to a primary care doctor. I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. That's not everyone. But they should at least explain to you. Like, if they want you to go on a medication, they should have to explain why. And they should be able to give you statistics as to why. And I think most people will find that the more they ask questions, the more you will find out just what your doctor doesn't really know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you might be shocked. So eat real food. Give your kids real food. Your kids are growing and developing. Your kids need real food. They don't need granola bars and peanut butter and cereal and cookies and crackers and mac and cheese and fruit snacks and fruit juice and kids Go-Gurt yogurt and toaster pastries and Pop-Tarts. They don't need that crap.
Well, that's great. Kimberly, thank you so much for an update on what's going on. Have a great week, everyone. If you're an amateur radio operator and would like to know more about antennas and how to make the best of them, please visit my website, www.hamradio.me. Mary Elizabeth. Thanks for listening to the Transmitter 42 podcast. If you would like to send us feedback or suggestions, please email us at radioshow@t42.am or send a note via U.S. mail to Transmitter 42 LLC, P.O. Box 100, Remington, Virginia 22734. All our podcasts are available for your favorite player. Visit t42.am for our catalog. Transmitter 42.